Hey everybody, that's right, a Toy Story review. I figured with Toy Story 4 coming out in just a handful of days, at the time of this recording, I might as well pump out a Toy Story game review. Now, to preface, I love Toy Story. I think it's one of the most unique ideas out in cinema right now. And if you watch my Mean Greetings review, you'd probably understand why. The perspective of toys living their own lives away from their owners and being sentient is really interesting, especially when you consider the perspective of it all. And it had many kids guessing and trying to figure out whether or not Toy Story was actually a real thing and their toys were actually alive. Come on, admit it. You were the ones setting up toys in a specific pose at the middle of the night and would wake up randomly and look at the toy and just be like, did it move? No? Not the only one? Listen, I'm not crazy. Right? Maybe you might be crazy. I'm not crazy. Anyway, the films themselves are fantastic, and if you haven't seen them, why? What's your problem? Go watch them now. Get out of this review. A case could be made for a film study, but that's not why we're here today. We're here to talk about Toy Story 2, Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue. Now, I know what you're thinking.
Why not this one and not the first game? The first game is the one in the series that you should really be covering if you're going in order.
Well, that's just because I don't own the first game. I don't, sorry. Plus, it's really hard, so I don't really feel like yelling today. It's a good thing, alright? Toy Story 4 is coming out tomorrow. Let's have some fun.
The game was developed by Traveler's Tales, a logo and theme all too familiar with many of you, I'm sure. And if you were like me in the 90s, you probably wondered if the mascot had its own game because he seemed pretty darn cool. I mean, look at him up there, sitting around all mysterious-like. These guys have been around forever and have produced a slew of Disney-related gaming properties. Usually crafting well-done games, Traveler's Tales' reputation is that of a positive, ensuring quality. And Disney at this point in time was untouchable and very much still on its video game renaissance. Almost all of their games were top-notch quality, with games such as DuckTales and Goof Troop in the early 90s, even down toward the winding down years of the 2000s with a game like Tarzan. So how does Toy Story 2 fare in that comparison? Really darn well, actually. Even by today's standards, I think the game in certain aspects has aged extraordinarily well, while some other parts of it haven't. It follows the same plot as the film and goes on from there. Woody gets abducted and it's up to Buzz and the gang to rescue him. Although in the game's case, it's really just Buzz, as the rest of the characters only serve the game to provide you with menial tasks or hint in this action-adventure platformer.
Said tasks usually stay the same throughout the course of the game for their respective characters. Whether it's doing races, or collecting trinkets, or defeating bosses, or collecting Mr. Potato Head's accessories to unlock new gadgets and weapon upgrades and mobility upgrades. Okay, I get it! Collecting 50 coins for Ham, who will incessantly nag you until you get them all.
Need some coins here, Buzz. Buzz, over here!
Each level is unique and tailor-made for Buzz's abilities, of which include a double jump and being able to shoot your laser, which serves as your main form of attack, to an attack spin, which can also double as a defensive option in the case of enemy projectiles, or even an offensive maneuver when enemies who get a little too close for comfort need to be backed off. You can also supercharge both attacks by holding down their respective buttons and letting go once the charge meter on the bottom right fills up, giving you a super shot with the laser and the super spin with the twirl. You also have the ability to go into first-person mode with Buzz for some precision shooting with the laser, usually to take care of an objective or an item impeding your progression or an annoying enemy. But if you're like me, you usually use first-person to reset the camera, which isn't as bothersome as most games of this era, but every now and then can be a pain. You also have the Super Stomp, which is usually only used for puzzles or getting around to certain areas. Thankfully, its usages are very minimal. But these aren't the only means that Buzz has of getting around or disposing of enemies. As said before, the more you progress through the game, the more Buzz gets to have in his arsenal. Unfortunately, once you've unlocked said items, they only stay with you per the level it's specifically tied to and not throughout the course of the game. For instance, if you pick up the rocket booster shoes at Al's Toy Barn, they're instantaneously used in that scenario, and not an item that you can carry with you and activate in another level. The same could be said for the grapple hook and disc launchers you acquire toward the later half of the game, which aren't an instant use item, but a resource that you can manage and keep for that specific level, but upon exiting, will always go away. While I understand why in some instances they would do this, with specific levels not needing said items, or even the disc launcher making things a little too easy with its homing capabilities, it still stinks that you can't at least carry them over. You've worked to unlock the items, they should stay with you no matter where you go, you've earned it. You also have the green laser, which isn't an unlock per se, but more of a power-up that you find in levels. The green laser makes your laser turn into a deadly assault laser. It's powerful and has an extreme rate of fire, able to take most bosses out with so much of a sweat, and most of the common enemy types in the game with a single hit. Again, it's only per level though. As a game, it functions fine. It plays exceptionally well, and the controls are pretty tight, and the most important thing is, it's just fun. The challenge is fair, for the most part, and it's what you would expect to see Buzz doing, and probably have seen since the film's release, so it's pretty accurate in that regard. You know, with the exception of the deadly laser. And I do say for the most part the challenge is fair, because there are a few instances, specifically in levels like Andy's Neighborhood and Construction Yard, where the challenge isn't so much the bosses you encounter or the objective, but rather the camera sometimes being out of position and having you miss a jump, resulting into you plummeting way down to the ground below, and having to reclimb all the way back up just to finish the boss off to get your last Pizza Planet token to clear the level for 100% completion. This can be frustrating, but it's nothing that you can't get past without trying. Nothing about the game is extraordinarily cryptic, and most things in the game can be solved with just a few bits of critical thinking. I dare say the most cryptic thing about this game is needing to use the super jump in Andy's Neighborhood to submerge the rubber ducky in this pool so you can gain more height on your jump to reach the Pizza Planet token. Where the game shines, though, is its excellent level design and music, of which you're hearing now in the background. The majority of levels in this game are an absolute blast to play through, and the only real exception I found being Elevator Hop, with its make-or-break jumps consisting of a good chunk of the level. It's quite genius to think of all the ways the devs thought about getting Buzz around, whether it's climbing on a broomstick to get a higher vantage point, or riding a balloon, though I will say pushing boxes around does wear out its welcome relatively fast. It's a mechanic used way too often. It's also a bummer that despite the opening to Toy Story 2 being the fantastic Buzz Lightyear video game sequence that everyone wished they could actually play, this game actually didn't attempt that at all, and just left it in as a cutscene. We wouldn't unfortunately get that level until Toy Story 3, but that's another video for another time. Levels like Andy's Neighborhood or even Al's Spaceland are such trips, and countless others, that even though you're doing a lot of the same tasks over and over again, it never feels old. And it's also helped out by the exquisite score provided by composers Andy Blythe and Martin Jostra. Each track is unique and specifically made for said levels, and all of them match the environments they're made for, whether it's the jazzy tunes of Alleys and Gullies, complete with the ever-rare vibra-slap, or the very stern and serious spaghetti western sounds of Al's Penthouse, to the upbeat country do-si-do music of Al's Toy Barn. There isn't one bad track in the game, and the work these guys did is superb and to be commended. I wish games today had as inspired soundtracks as the one in this game.
The bottom line is, considering it's a movie tie-in game, Toy Story 2 for all intents and purposes really didn't need to do much considering the license to succeed. But the game over-delivered my expectations as a kid, and if you're a parent, it might just do the same for yours. If you haven't played Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue, I highly recommend that you do so. The game is currently sitting on the PlayStation Store for about $6, and you can probably get it even cheaper on eBay. And it's totally worth it just to play a game that's a nostalgic flashback to an era where games were games, and quite frankly, they were fun. And you could rely on them being absolute quality. Anyways, guys, until the next time, hope to see you guys on the next review.
And beyond!
You know what? I've had it with you guys interrupting this review. It's time for the nuke.